Thanks a lot, Mpiake. I'll read a brief statement on behalf of the three institutions as introduced. This is in response to the outcome of the case against Pastor Timothy Omotoso and his co-accused, and the alleged failure of the justice system in the successful prosecution of sexual offences cases in South Africa. Over the years, South Africa has seen a shocking and drastic increase in reported and recorded cases of sexual offences. This is a cause for concern because it touches the core and moral fiber of our society in general. In line with its mandate of protecting and promoting the cultural, religious, and linguistic rights of communities, the CRL embarked on an investigative study into the commercialization of religion and abuse of people's belief systems between 2015 and 2017. It was during this process that the matter of sexual violations in sacred sites like churches and traditional healing spaces strongly came forth. Coincidentally, during this time, the CRL Commission was approached by the late Pamela Mabini with a case of alleged sexual violation and possible human trafficking in Umhlanga KZN by a religious leader. This is how actually the case of Pastor Omotoso came to being. I'm sure most of you are aware that Pamela Mabini about 3 or 4 weeks ago was gunned down in front of her home with her mother in the house. She played a very critical role in this case. She stayed the course. She was in court throughout these years, and she supported the complainants in this case. So her passing really to us and the way she died is a very sore point. Without her, Pastor Omotoso would never have seen the inside of a court. So we salute her today. As the Pastor Omotoso case unfolded, witnesses soon attracted unwelcome attention, placing them in harm's way. That escalated, rendering to vulnerabilities, posing a threat to their lives. This was further exacerbated by an inefficient witness protection program. Also, changes in the prosecution team and the presiding officer that required one of the complainants to retell her testimony to the new team. The protracted nature of the case added an extra burden of trauma characterized by many instances of starts and stops along the way. Following the pronouncement on this case by Judge Skuman on the 2nd of April 2025 in Gqeberha, the CRL decided to confer with the 2 other Chapter 9 institutions, namely CGE and the South African Human Rights Commission, to address, amongst others, the outcome of Pastor Omotoso case, the ramifications and the general handling of the case, other gender-based violence and femicide cases in South Africa, and also to discuss the way forward. The meeting with other Chapter 9 bodies was necessitated by the fact that the Omotoso case was not just a matter of a religious leader who was charged for alleged crimes committed within a religious setting, but also about violation of the rights of human dignity and sexual violation against women. As Chapter 9 institutions will always respect the rule of law and the decisions taken by the court. Of significance with this case, the court is heard as saying its prosecutors have not acquitted themselves satisfactorily in discharging their responsibilities. It is on this basis that we must respond to this and ensure that we help restore the public's confidence in the justice system. Not only do we echo the public's profound outrage about the process and the outcome of the case against Pastor Omotoso and his co-accused, but also believe that the criminal justice system's failure to hold Pastor Omotoso accountable constitutes gross injustice. We are further appalled by the mediocre quality of work done by the prosecution team as expressed by Judge Skuman. As Chapter 9, this concerns us and brings into question whether we have fit and proper persons to ensure that access to justice is realized before the courts. The acquittal of Pastor Omotoso and his co-accused is a huge, devastating blow felt by many in our country, particularly the young women who, despite all odds, came forward and even made many sacrifices to seek justice and to find closure from the pain they endured for many years. This alleged mismanagement of the case by the NPA creates an untenable environment which might not only cast doubts about their ability, but also it shows the massive extent to which they failed so many young people. The NPA's handling of the case may consequently discourage other victims from coming forward and open cases of rape or sexual abuse that takes place at sacred spaces in the hands of religious leaders and Okobela, traditional healer training. The nature of these judgments and many others that we observe through our court monitoring processes are devastating, especially when the conduct of the officers of the court contributed to a negative outcome. The psychological impact of such judgment must not be taken for granted, as they have long-lasting effects on the current and future complainants. Undeniably, this outcome is bound to make hundreds or thousands of other victims doubt the criminal justice system and become reluctant to even come forward to lay charges. Justice must not only be done, but must be seen to be done. The outcome of the judgment highlights deeply concerning gaps in the system. If this is not addressed, It will undermine all efforts taken by broader society to address GBVF. Against the backdrop of this judgment, we are not convinced that justice was done in this matter. It is therefore imperative that we independently interrogate the gaps highlighted in the judgment and then recommend measures that must be introduced to ensure these do not similarly recur. To this end, the three commissions will jointly conduct an inquiry into the processes that led to the outcome of this and other cases. For that reason, several institutions and individuals will be called upon to appear before an inquiry within the next few months to investigate the whole process and come up with possible recommendations. We will, however, be prioritizing the meeting with the National Prosecuting Authority. The time and place of this investigation process will be announced in due course. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Mr.
Now I'm going to invite the Chairperson of the CGE, Advocate and Service
Should we swap for the mics?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We, as the CGE, wish to emphasize that this, for us, is one of those cases that actually amplify challenges that exist within the system. And by the criminal justice system, we mean from the point of police stations being approached right up to the point of parole being granted to people who have committed gross violations to women and children. We have undertaken processes in our organization. The first one was a few months ago, wherein we investigated the high number of cases that have been cancelled in the Mpumalanga province, especially sexual violation cases. We are also following up on other cases wherein even the families in the Mpumalanga region of Matsulu, I think, are colluding with the violators and trafficking their children. And the police say they are unable to deal with this. We also, in November, spent a few days in KwaZulu-Natal wherein we had investigative hearings, accountability hearings, where SAPS, NPA, DOJ, and DSD, Department of Social Development, Department of Justice, and Department of Health were called to come and account for some of the challenges that we have seen there. The challenges in KwaZulu-Natal are so worrying and glaring. They even include cases where the medical legal personnel themselves actually destroy specimens that are taken from women after violation and any of the victims and survivors, because they say, SAPS takes a long time to actually come forward. So we are going to follow them up. So this press conference is actually to say, thankfully, the Omotoso matter was in the public eye, and it actually got the attention of the country and beyond. But this, we believe, is what has been happening throughout the process that we are investigating, that we have actually started to follow up. We have been approached by different stakeholders, and we do know that this has been happening in the value chain of trying to seek and restore, or trying to seek and secure justice for victims of violence. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson. I'm now going to call upon the Chairperson of the Human Rights Commission for us to discuss with you.
Good morning, colleagues, and good morning to the Chairperson of the CRL and Chairperson of the CGE. The South African Human Rights Commission's mandate is to promote, protect, and monitor human rights in the Republic of South Africa. And we do come across a number of cases of this nature, and then we engage with our sister Chapter 9s, and we normally have very good collaboration on some of these issues. Indeed, this case has brought a number of issues to the fore. And one of them also is, of course, which Chair of CG has spoken on, the issue about the DNA, and we urge the labs, in particularly the state forensic labs, to ensure that there is speedily resolving of the DNA and the testing, etc., because then that also gives a long delay and cause a blockage in the system. Indeed, this case has brought us to talk about the system. Maybe the system is broken from, as we said, from the beginning, where some women were refused assistance from the police station up to the point of where the DNA is either missing or is delayed or is not being properly looked at into. The case of the Kwekwe case is a case in point that we also have now that rocked this nation, rocked South African people. However, for us, the most important thing is also the access to justice. Access to justice, where many victims of sexual assault, and in particularly in GBV environment, where justice is not being granted to the victims, and the victims are not believed because sometimes they say victims make up stories. And so the importance of justice for us, and that's the right of victims to that justice. And if those victims do not get justice, then their rights have been violated. And that's why we are collaborating with the two sister Chapter 9 institutions to ensure that victims have not only have their right to justice, but also will get justice in the process of a system that needs to fix itself in order for those victims to enjoy that right by having the justice that they need. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Maybe you could just sit there since they're going to ask questions. Okay. Rotating as we go.
Thank you, Chairperson. We are now going to take questions from the media. I'm going to take 3 questions for the first round, and then the second round, and also to the same. Plus, help us. Tell us your name, the media house you represent. And I see the hands for those who like to raise questions. I've noticed the hand here.
Thanks.
I've noted the hand there. Noted the hand there. So I'll come back for the second round. Let me start everything you name.
We'll take questions from
The house as well as.
just come closer.
If you can raise your voice, alternatively.
Thank you so much. It's Omotoso from Eyewitness News. I just wanted to ask, for the terms of reference of this inquiry, can we have those, please? I understand that you're investigating, but in terms of your reach in this inquiry, how far you're going, the bounds of it, just the terms of reference, if we have them, would be really nice. And then can we have clarity, please, on the role of the NPA? I don't know if I heard Metobo well when she said you will be launching this inquiry and the people will be called to account. And then you say you're going to be prioritizing a meeting with the NPA. Are you going to be calling these the prosecutors specifically who are working on this matter to come and account to this inquiry? Will they be testifying and be questioned as well? Or will the engagement with the NPA be separate from the actual inquiry that's being posted? Thank you.
Thank you. Second question, please.
Maybe just to follow up on the terms of reference question, and I know maybe it's preempting things, but what outcome are you hoping for from the inquiry? I'm tempted to say, given all the issues that you've highlighted, it seems a little bit you reacting after the fact, and all of these things have been happening for a long time, but I appreciate that nothing that has happened. So what outcomes are you hoping for? And then maybe just to focus on what must happen immediately, just in terms of the prosecutions with the APA, and have they had engagements with the APA about what has happened in the recent case as well? Yeah, and maybe just on that, just it's been a week now, just your reflections on what has happened, what they know.
Thank you. Can I take can you either can raise your voice?
I can raise my voice, thank you. My name is Hawelo Magonero from UFM. To the Commission for Gender Equality, just a bit of detail on how these cases are, you say that a high number of them are being dropped, whether they are dropped through mediation between the victim and the perpetrator, just the details there. And why do you continue to refer to almost also as Pastor Omotoso when he has lost credibility in such a manner? Are we not elevating him by doing so? And tied to that question is a lot of people in society feel like the church space is not regulated. I can tell you where I live now, as I was preparing to work, there were people doing stuff that's supposedly church stuff, but a bit dramatic. You could suspect they are a cult if you are not part of them. I don't know what they are doing. So they are calling for stricter regulation, so that's just not about, I mean, a 25-year-old calling themselves a pastor, a 22-year-old, when would they have acquired their theology degree, and on which grounds are they doing that? And finally, on the Bible case, just your comment on Afifaram jumping in so swiftly to defend the principal in the matter, just a general comment on that one, thank you.
I take CDC, then we come back for the second round of questions.
Good morning. I'm Griselda Lewis from SABC Television. For any of the delegates addressing us this morning, there had been reports about Timothy Omotoso being deported. Is that of concern? Because as you launch this inquiry, you'd possibly want to hear from the prosecutors or those who were in charge of this case. But if we look at other cases, for example, like the one relating to Bushiri, it had been a mammoth task to try and get Bushiri brought back to South Africa. So just maybe calls on that. What is the sentiment that all three of you are sharing on the possibility that should he even be allowed to leave the country? The court has made its judgment. What happens in the case if indeed he does leave? And on the protection of whistleblowers, it's a conversation that has been had for a very long time. I've not heard any of the three institutions speak about that. We heard, in fact, a couple of days ago, I think there was a statement that was gunned down in the Wynberg Magistrates Court. You've had Pamela Mabini, who's also, gunned down. There are simply no laws that protect and whistleblowers. So You've had Babita Diokaran. These are individuals who I guess people could argue, are passionate about this country, are passionate about democracy, don't want to see corruption and other ills continue in the country. But these are people who do it at great risk, and it's multiple people that have lost their lives as a result. Why should anyone in this country speak up against any ills when they have to die? So what do we say then? What do you say to the government about protecting individuals like Pamela Mabini, Babita Diokaran, and others, who come forward and try to assist, but it's clearly in vain. Simple as that. You lose your life. Thank you.
Thank you, Priscilla. We'll come back to the leadership here. You determine who comes first to the different questions raised by the different media houses.
Okay, seeing that I'm sitting in front of the mic, there's the first few questions will be taken by the CGE chair, and the issue of the outcome we're hoping for by the Human Rights Commission chair. The question about why do we refer to Omotoso as a pastor, that's the story of the nature of the monster in this country. You decide on the title you want. You don't need to register anywhere. No one can call you to order right now, but I thought I would raise the issue of next week on Tuesday. We will be announcing what measures we're going to put in place to make sure that such things stop. You see, if Omotoso wasn't going to be deported or to run away, he would still be preaching in his church. There's nothing stopping him. If he had bail at that point, when he was refused bail, he would still be going to his church and preaching, and no one can suspend him, no one can stop him. We're monitoring a few other cases of religious leaders who have serious allegations against them, who continue to preach if they're out on bail, and they become bishops and archbishops and whatever they want to be, because no one can suspend them with the current system. We're saying next week we will be explaining the way forward for a new system that will take care of the problems we are raising. And then the alleged deportation of Pastor Omotoso, he did say as he was living in court that I'll be going home like tomorrow. So as far as we know, the judge said he is free to go. And we live in a democracy. You can't keep people in jail even when there's no case pending. So if Home Affairs was saying he was here illegally anyway with several passports and whatever allegations were made at the time, that made the presiding officer deny him bail, and that's why he's been in jail all this time. It was based on his illegal presence in the country. So the normal thing is that if you're not here legally, it's either you are deported or jailed or something else happens to you, but the system can't keep you here beyond the case in court. Once a judge pronounces, then we're all bound by that decision. The issue of whistleblowers, I'm sure all three of us, one way or the other, have raised the issue of a witness protection program. In this particular case of Omotoso, we even went to the public protector because one witness had serious threats against them that were also acknowledged by the police. The police told us that this one is at high risk. Actually, the deputy minister at the time, that discussing her story there in the maximum prison in the Eastern Cape, and that they're planning to kill her. So we knew for sure that, I will name her because you all know her, that Cheryl's life was in danger. We took her to the witness protection people and asked for help. The help wasn't forthcoming in the way that it needed to come for someone who was a student at the time. She was at UJ. The only answer they could give her was that, oh, yeah, we've got a place in Limpopo. You'll have to leave university, leave your family, go and live in this flat. We'll come see you once a week to bring you groceries and a phone to call your family. Although there's this thing called Witness Protection Program, we realize how useless this thing is. The only thing that they could say was, well, if you don't like this, sign here that you've refused. So it was an offer that had to be refused. You can't tell someone who is seeing a psychologist, who has a family supporting her, who has systems of friends supporting her, who is studying, that you must abandon your studies. Maybe UNISA can take you this time of the year. So there's this story called Witness Protection Program, which we discovered does not exist. We said to them, so we are looking out for criminals. Maybe if she were a gang member and now she wants to tell on the gangs, of course, that one will want to be in the middle of nowhere. You're not looking after someone who has a life. So the issue of Witness Protection Program, we reported it to the public protector. They made a finding as well that what they had offered to her was not a viable offer. So the Witness Protection Program we mentioned in the system that will also be looking at how it functions. It's not designed for a young person who has a life, who wants to continue with this life, who then need protection from the madness. You know, the protection, I always say to people, the kind of madness you find in this sector, called the religious sector, is not normal. The kind of insults, you know, I've been back in the CRL, like this is my 3rd month, but the amount of insults I've been getting is like mind-boggling. This is the most vicious sector I've ever seen. I think you're better off being a hardcore criminal than trying to sort out things with the religious people. They are much more vicious than the normal criminal. So we are going to be looking at why this particular case failed in terms of witness protection as well. You said we'll take the other one.
Oh, okay.
Are you going to hear her sitting here?
Yes.
The owners of the mics.
I'll
Is
stretch.
it okay if she's sitting there? Or must
Yeah.
we change the
Yes,
seats?
we can.
We can.
No,
Is it?
otherwise we're going to change every time.
That's what they want.
Can we just,
Okay.
No.
No, we'll change. It's fine. Don't move. You'll mess up their things.
Yes. Okay. I will respond to the first question about the TORs. We are in the process of drawing up our TORs, and why we have not come up with any document yet is because of the amount that we have to put together to know how we take the matter forward. all of us as the three Chapter 9 institutions have actually gone before several portfolio committees to go and present some of the challenges within the system. Us as the CGE, for example, have also embarked on, as I was saying, accountability hearings with some of the stakeholders who are part of the system, individual stakeholders, as well as the critical stakeholders as a group in a province to put in a dipstick to understand what the challenges are. So we are going to be putting all of that information together. CRL Commission has actually done a lot of work with regards to the beginning of the process, wherein a lot of victims and survivors go to the police and are turned down, all because they're saying this is happening in a church, this is happening within the traditional leadership setting. And so even that has got to come for us to be able to do that. Us and the Human Rights Commission have been, they are busy now. We just completed a few 9 prisons in South Africa, wherein we looked at the conditions of incarceration to confirm that indeed there is an opportunity for rehabilitation, or it actually is, it defeats the purpose. So when you look at the value chain, you look at all of those things. As I said, we will be starting all the way, I think I'm also now jumping to your question from UFM, all the way from reporting, where we are saying there is no police officer who has got the discretion, that discretionary power to decline to take a report of a crime. That lies with the prosecutor. But it is such a fundamental issue of reporting a crime, reporting a violation, because you are trying to restore your rights as given by the Constitution, that even a single prosecutor cannot do it. A prosecutor has got to confer with the senior prosecutor or the control prosecutor to say, are these merits sufficient enough for us to take this matter to court? So it has never been a situation where one person behind the counter somewhere in a police station says, we cannot hear your matter. But these are happening. Same as prosecutors. We have intervened as the CGE in a matter at Palmbridge where the prosecutor was saying, because you had had alcoholic drinks, it is not going to stand in court. Yet we secured an 18-year conviction for the perpetrator. So we are going to be looking at all of that. Another chain in the criminal justice system is actually, as I mentioned before, the National Health Laboratory Services. As you know, I've mentioned it even before, we've got only 3 forensic laboratories in this country. That is not enough, considering the levels of violence. We need to find out how are they coping, how are they dealing with biological evidence that gets brought to them to analyze what is the turnaround time. So it's not going to be an easy thing for us to actually have 3 points and say these are our TORs. It actually has to end up being a document, a way forward that we will say, in this country, the levels of violence are so high, yet this is how the land lies out there. And in that document, we need to recommend. Why are we taking live specimens from the Free State once a month? Why are we taking live specimens from Durban to Cape Town once a month, if at all? Why are we having 3 laboratories? Why are we outsourcing? How much money are we paying to the private laboratories who are helping with the analysis? But you also have to look at documentary evidence. Are our police officers able to analyze documentary evidence? Does a ticket, a flight ticket, sent to a young girl in the Eastern Cape to come over to Mhlanga to join the church is it meaningful to them? Do they understand the magnitude and weight of that as documentary evidence that can assist them in their case and in their investigation? So all of that has got to be analyzed, and not in a finger-pointing way, but actually to say, this is why we are where we are. Let's overhaul. But we cannot overhaul piecemeal, nor can we overhaul without the requisite evidentiary proof that the system needs to be overhauled, if so, where, how, and even suggest budgetary inputs by Treasury. Just my last question would be on the issue of how do you hope some of the cases will be resolved? Mediation is still an issue that is being mooted out. As you all know, the Gauteng South Court has actually put out proposals out there to formalize it. But it is said that in the communities, especially where there is a lot of poverty and disgruntlement in terms of the usefulness and responsiveness of the system, parents have actually mediated at the expense of their children in most cases. So mediation is something that needs to be looked at very carefully. The Commission for Gender Equality will be making a submission to the South African Law Reform Commission in terms of what mediation means, how it has to be approached, and what has to be excluded if there has to be mediation. But mediation is basically in response, currently as it is looked at, it is in response to the backlogs that we are experiencing that in turn themselves, the backlogs, undermine access to justice. And then, as I was saying earlier, you have the intervention of families. And this is where the role of civil society organizations come in, where they need to empower communities to say you do not have to have a perpetrator come to your house and ask for forgiveness with a plastic of groceries. And this is what we are seeing in the Matsulu area in Mpumalanga, where young girls are actually being violated, and the parents are arguing it is cultural. They are arguing that it is a cultural practice that is called funela kaneno, which basically is a chubediso of sorts, where they say, no, segam tatile, but this young girl stays at home, and as the truck drivers come month to month, the young girl is released to the truck driver in the name of ufunela kaneno, almost like this has become a wife now. And these are 13, 12, 15, 19-year-olds that are happening there. So CSOs also have a role to assist, to educate communities that is a form of abuse, that is trafficking. If you look at what trafficking is, it's actually taking advantage of social, economic, and other vulnerabilities. This is a classic example of. So we're calling on CSOs as well to come in and step up to make sure that communities are empowered. Then, as I have mentioned, police officers and prosecutors do not have a right. No single prosecutor can actually make a decision to or not to prosecute. They come back with a formal report from the control prosecutor or the senior prosecutor, and that report must be filed so that should there be any objections to the decision not to prosecute, it gets revisited, it is a formal decision, and it is reviewed accordingly. Thank you.
Okay, I'm done. Okay. There's another round coming.
These are not musical chairs. Okay.
I'll be able to pass this one. Okay. Thanks. Yes, you're right.
Thank you so much. With regard to the inquiry, of course, our most important people that we'll be inviting to the inquiry are obviously the victims, obviously the institutions, the various institutions within the criminal justice system, civil society, and we'll invite all interested parties from the broader community to come and do submissions to the inquiry. What will be the outcome of the inquiry? All inquiries are there to establish the facts, and on the basis of those facts, recommendations will be done to the various institutions and also to the various prosecuting authorities and into the criminal justice system as to what we have discovered of what, through the testimonies and submissions of institutions, individuals, and civil society, and of course the victims in particular, to come forward. And then establish those facts, we will then make recommendations appropriately to the various institutions and authorities. So that will also be the outcome of the inquiry, is then follow up on those on those recommendations, ensure that those recommendations are implemented so that we can prevent the inquiries about prevention and also establishing systems that can work for particularly the victims, so that, and also perhaps out of that there'll be a monitoring of those recommendations in order for us to make sure that things like this will never happen again in our country. Of course, on the issue about if the person, Omotoso, is leaving the country, well, as in the case of Bushiri, it will take a long time, and particularly in his case, he was found not guilty, so it's very difficult, because otherwise he'll work with international agencies that will ensure to come back. But if he is illegal in this country and Home Affairs take it, he will be taken to through the court process, ends up in Lindela, and obviously will stay there for some time. And if the inquiry, we can request that he stays until such time he appears before us, should we wish to call him to the inquiry. Protection of whistleblowers, my two chairs have spoken about it. The sad thing in this country is that there are a number of witnesses that do not want to come forward even if they have information, because they don't feel protected. In the case of how many in the gang-ridden areas, how many people have been killed. And we need to investigate and ask, how did a gun come into the Wynberg court? Because you have all these security, as you enter in the court, all of those security measures, and how did this gun come into court? And how did this killer escape from the court? And so we need to ask those questions, and personally, I think that the Commission will be getting into questioning that. But the killings of witnesses and the fact that the protection services for whistleblowers and for witnesses is so poor and so weak makes it, as you say, as the Commissioner said, Chairperson said, you can sign to leave, but many people leave the protection, witness protection, and end up being dead. And this is what is of concern to all of us in this country. So we really need to see a better witness protection program in this country. If we do not have a solid witness protection program in this country, we'll end up where it's a discretionary of some person who says, I'll bring you groceries at the end of the month, or you can decide if you don't like it here, you can go away. How can you say to a witness, if you don't like it, you can go away? The witness protection is what is called witness protection. Protect that witness so that you can have effective outcome of a court case. On the issue about why the Trekwe case, AfriForum jumped into the bandwagon, well, they explained that they are not the lawyers. They explained that they're not the legal people. They explained that they were invited or approached by the person concerned, the school principal, and therefore, that is the case that has been put forward into the public domain. The question is, are we going to invite prosecutors to the inquiry? Of course, everybody will be invited. As we deem fit, as we see where there are cases for them to be invited, both individually or as an institution, We will do that in the inquiry, because the inquiry is to ascertain facts. The inquiry is to ascertain what went wrong and how we can correct it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Can I then get an indication of further questions? I'll start here. You see the person in the back. There's going to be 1, 2, 3. Okay, you can start.
I don't think I need a mic, I'm loud enough. My name is Sihle Sibisi and I am standing on behalf of a civil society organization. I am the national co-convener of the National Strategic Plan Pillar Number 1, which speaks to accountability, coordination and leadership. I am also a survivor of gender-based violence within the church, within the religious sector. I'm sure many of you have seen me on the BBC documentary where I spoke about the abuse I experienced at the hands of the late T.B. Joshua. Today, I am so disturbed by the fact that injustice has happened to yet another woman, another person within our country. We talk of the DNA backlog. In 2023, at the Presidential Gender-Based Violence and Femicide Summit, I was there. At that time, the minister was Honorable Bheki Cele. He promised us that the DNA backlog would be the thing of the past. This was in 2023. We are sitting, he even vowed and said, if by February the following year, the DNA backlog is not the thing of the past, he himself will resign from his job. We are sitting in 2025 in March. We're still hearing the same story that DNA, there's still a backlog. That is why our justice is not happening. It can't be that we still have only 3 laboratories that are governmental, that are in charge of DNA in our country, and we have other private ones. So our government has failed us, number 1, in that front. Number 2, yes, you're going to have an inquiry. I applaud you for saying you're going to have the inquiry, but this also will it not also cause another form of secondary victimization to the survivors and the victims of Omotoso, not just him, many others who are victims who have been in the situation of Cheryl Zondi and the victims that come forth. Thirdly, how are you protecting people who come out and speak publicly about the injustice, the abuse they experience at the hands of the religious sector from bloggers? Our country signed the POPI Act and they said cyberbullying is a crime in our country. But we find that people who are bloggers, they are the ones that help to amplify and silence the voices of victims. If I come out and say I was abused by Pastor so-and-so, he did this to me, there'll be a specific blogger who will dig into my past and say, but she used to be an alleged prostitute or an alleged thief, to try and discredit what I'm talking about, to say I was abused. What is the CRL going to do? What is the Commission of Gender Equality going to do? What is the Human Rights Commission going to do to us in regards to such bloggers who are making names and making sure that they are causing secondary victimizations to people who are speaking about the abuse in the church? I applaud you, Ms. Togo, for saying that the church has become a demon. It is very vicious, where it cannot be controlled. Mismanagement of the case by the NPA, the psychological torment and torture, not only is Cheryl Zondi and the other girls going through, other girls out there. The question now is, if the witness protection in our country is failing those girls, and if people like me, because I also am a whistleblower, am I next? Will tomorrow you'll be having a commission, a press briefing like this to say Sihle Sibisi was gunned down because she spoke out because of the injustice, the abuse that was happening in the church? What protection is Sihle Sibisi getting? None. Will other people like Sihle Sibisi, like Cheryl Zondi, like other girls, like other boys who are currently still being abused in the church have the voice to come out and speak? Definitely not. Because why? Omotoso spent 8 years in jail. And 8 years later, he was found not guilty, he was acquitted. So what does that say to us, victims who were abused within the church? It shows us that justice in our country is a thing that is just spoken and written and signed upon as a model law, but nothing is being instituted to make sure that we are psychologically, mentally protected holistically. So the question is, am I next? Is there another whistleblower who's going to be killed out there? Is there another girl out there who is currently a victim within the church? We are seeing mega pastors who are currently in courts for gender-based violence cases. And these pastors are still preaching on the pulpit. They are using the pulpit to intimidate their victims because they are out on bail. They will stand on the pulpit and say, my God is big. Look at me. I got a bail. What is the justice system saying to us? Because if he's getting arrested and he gets the bail, we are going through secondary victimization, because that is why his people will say, yes, Papa, yes, Daddy, you are right. Because he will stand on the pulpit and say, yes, I was crucified just like Jesus, and I got bailed because my God has helped me. You heard the cry of Cheryl Zondi. She said they are going to, evil prevails in our country. And she said they're going to turn it around and say, God did it for Omotoso. Just like other mega pastors in the country, in South Africa, who are South Africans, who are currently in court, who are still preaching on the pulpit. They are preaching every day, making sure that they are vilifying, tormenting, causing secondary victimization, either directly or indirectly to victims of gender-based violence and femicide. So if you want the civil society organization to work with you, how are you protecting us? How are we being protected? And secondly, where's the funding? You are not giving us the resources for us to go and work with the community. You said civil society organizations must be on the ground to make sure that we are making sure and educating families that do not take money, do not take food in exchange for the abuse of your child. But we don't have resources. Guess who's getting the resources? The resources are given to mega organizations that are doing mega work. But us on the ground, especially organizations like people like us, who are victims, who are today survivors of such traumatic experiences, we are being silenced. And you must never forget that silence is violence.
Okay, thanks. Can I take the second question?
Okay, so my next is clarity. Just the commission that you're speaking about, will this be focusing on Omotoso or all the cases in general?
Okay, thank you. Let's go on.
Thank you so much. Another one for Omotoso, please. There is a case that we are all following that is almost the equivalent of Omotoso in Korea. The rape case against Archbishop Zolo.
Yes.
The NPA is fighting, and it seems like they're fighting on their own to keep that matter on the roll. Just yesterday, arguments were heard in the matter for the judge to recuse himself. Is there a reason why the CRL isn't part of the court process, either in the form of a watching brief in court, either, what we see with civil rights groups that attach on the case as well and file supporting documents to say we support the work of the NPA, A, B, and C. Is there a reason why we're not seeing the CRL present in this particular matter? I fear that it's going to be another reactionary, or we'll see reactions from the CRL once whatever happens in court. I just found it odd that the organization itself doesn't have a watching brief on the ground or even supporting the legal process that's happening in court when this matter is of such a great magnitude. And there is another rape case against the same pastor in a different court in Verenigd, and we're not hearing from the CRL on this side of it.
Thank you. Can I come back to the leadership for the responses? Thank you.
Thanks. I think I should say, we hear you, see. We've heard you. We've been hearing you for a long time. We understand your struggles, we understand the difficult work that we are doing on the ground. And we thank you for that, because you do more than most of us. The work that you do in the religious sector in terms of challenges that face us in that sector is massive. It is unfortunate that the system cannot protect you and other people who are whistleblowers, especially in the religious sector. As I said, there was a first attempt on the life of Pamela Mabini. She escaped the gunmen who were trying to kill her in her home, outside her home. Still, there was no protection for her. We cry over that because we realize that, you see, on that day when the judge pronounced on the matter, I knew that if she were still alive, she would have been there in court. But then I said to myself, how would she feel after so much hard work that it has all been worth nothing? I think most people don't know how painful it was to many people, including myself, as they erupted into drum majorettes outside, the screams outside, the screams inside court, in jubilation. And some of the journalists were saying, while others are rejoicing, we are crying. Of course we cried. It's been 10 years of pain. Even before this case went to court, those brave young women stayed the course. And I think you and I will know how difficult it is to be up against powerful religious leaders. You are nothing. They are not even mega. Some of them are godly. People see them as representing God on earth. So you're up against a religious belief system, not just individuals. It's not like, you know, you're reporting on criminals and everyone knows criminals are out of order. But you're trying to rectify a system that wants to be kept corrupt, that enjoys the oppression. When we tell people that this is pure, undiluted oppression, they look at you as if you're mad. The level of cyberbullying that these young people, particularly in this Omotoso case, had to go through is just unbelievable. Unbelievable. On that day, I asked myself, what have we done here? We encouraged these young people for years to keep going, keep going. We're praying for you, we're with you. And I couldn't bring myself to say, for what? What was this all about? Hence, we're saying it should stop with them. And we should do all that we can so that other young people do not go through this trauma. The issue of witness protection program needs to be severely interrogated. The role of social media in the bullying of all of this. I'm sure you know that with Cheryl, they got her photos when she was still a model and they put them up and said, look who's accusing Omotoso. So That on its own, as you justifiably say, will be part of what we look at. What can the people who control social media do to stop or to prevent this madness from going on? But also, what is it that as a nation we're willing to do to stop what is happening in the religious sector? I have been very open with, doctors have the Health Professionals Council, social workers have the Social Workers Council. Everyone reports somewhere. This is the only place where, well, I've got 100,000, I can get a tent and chairs and a sound system and I'm good to go. I don't need to ask anyone, I don't need to do anything. I just need a startup capital and I'm ready to go. It can't continue. And I've said this repeatedly. I remember the twins from Durban, their mother saying, I said to her, you tried everything. She tried everything. She went to the church, she went to the police. The story, the judge did refer to her story, that the police, she thought, were helping her to go fetch her kids from the church, ended up taking off their uniform jackets and putting them on the floor for the men of God to walk over them. We said this in Parliament and Peggy Taylor was there. We asked him the difficult question of what happened to this case being in PE when 90% of the offense happened in Durban. There's a story to be told today, and we're hoping to unearth it during this inquiry because it's a sign of the system being reluctant to act and to do anything. So the issue of the funding for GBVF is still a question as to where's the money supposed to come from. Who's doing what, where, how do the victims get support from civil society? That's a very important thing to look into as part of this inquiry, because we cannot say we will be there for everybody everywhere. People on the ground need to be capacitated to look into this case. As I said at the beginning, we became aware of this case because Pamela fought hard for these young people. It was the only way where we could be aware what was happening somewhere where we're not located. That is also part of the challenges of funding for CRL, that we're not in provinces. You want to talk to us, you must have an email, you must have something to talk to us. So it's part of the challenge, really. And the thing of the rape case in the matter of Archbishop Zondo. If you remember, there was a hearing at the Civil Rights Commission pertaining to these allegations around Archbishop Zondo, which were later referred to the criminal justice system to deal with. So we are aware of what is happening there, not that we've walked away from it after holding hearings. We are paying attention to the case, but as all other cases, it's a difficult case. I'm sure even in this case you've realized that his congregants are with him all the way. He still goes to church to preach because, as I said, there's no regulation. There's no one who will say, I've given you this license to do this thing. I'm observing. And if there's a question mark around your name, not the religion itself, the religion is nothing. In all these cases, the Bible has nothing to do with them. They're doing this madness all on their own. So we've never looked at regulating religion because that would be a mad situation. So when people want to hide behind the bad things that they are doing, they tell you, oh, that mad woman is back wanting to affect freedom of religion. You are free to worship even this mic in front of me. No one will find problems with that. But you're not free to abuse people. Someone somewhere needs to say it is enough. And we're saying it needs to happen and to happen fast. And on Tuesday next week, we will be telling the nation how hard we're willing to fight for this, how we're going to fight for this, how we're going to stop these bloggers and whatever who are busy preaching that we want to stop freedom of religion. We're affecting these nice men of God and women of God. We will not be touching any nice men of God or nice women of God. We are saying criminals wearing whatever kind of gown, whatever kind of archbishop, bishop, cardinal, whatever you want to call yourself. Your time is almost over now. On Tuesday, we'll tell the nation exactly how we're going to do this. We've tested it constitutionally. We're on solid ground, but it's going to stop. It cannot continue anymore. We've suffered enough. Our children have suffered enough. If you knew half the story we hear there at the CRL, you'll be in shock. When we say our pain, you see, even Cheryl was saying in court that day, through her tears, most people who were going to lay charges after this case will probably not be willing. I can assure you, we've got several who are now saying, what if we get a bad prosecutor, as the judge said? What control do you have over what kind of prosecutor we're going to get? The judge has set us in a very difficult situation, this whole case, because you say to people, tell your truth, stay on your truth, and the system will support you. Out of the 60-odd young women who started with this, we ended up with 12 or 13, 12 in the end. Those were the resilient ones. And those are the ones who walked away with nothing. And I'm saying, yes, we know this is horrible. We know that it's painful. We know that we need to do more. But I'm saying, as this CRL Rights Commission that started in January, we're going to do more. We're willing to take all the risks. We're willing to do anything and everything to make sure that when our term ends, this thing would have changed dramatically and drastically. But we can't be controlled by people who tell us that there's freedom of religion in South Africa, let them be. Or who then come back and say to us, those ones should have known better. That's actually insulting victims. And to us, that is very gross. On Tuesday, we'll be telling the story of who is fighting for the bad guys to continue with their bad job. And it needs to stop. And I promise you, see, we're going to be hard, very hard on this. We're not going to give up. We're not going to give in. We will make sure that we protect vulnerable people. When the Constitution says the Civil Rights Commission must protect and promote the rights of communities, in this case, in the religious sector, it sends us to do a particular job We know it's a difficult job, but we want to say your tears are not wasted. Stay with us, monitor us, ask us the difficult questions. If it's like 3 years and we hear nothing, call me and say, what happened, Mama, there? Why are you now protecting these people? So I would say, dear, stop crying. We've cried enough. We now must wage a war. No tears, no nothing. Support us in what we're doing. It's going to be rough, we'll be insulted. Oh, at some point I was called the Sangoma just this week. And I was saying, if I were Sangoma, it would be a gift to me. Unfortunately, my ancestors, are so quiet, they're not telling me anything. It's only the pastors who are telling me that I've been called by my ancestors. I don't know how they know that. But you see, they find anything to throw at you. And they thought this was the nice insult this week, post Omotoso. Yeah, this mad woman who's a Sangoma. Yeah, she walked away with nothing. But I'm saying, let's try. The 3 of us sitting here are today saying to you, we will find answers. No matter how hard it becomes, we'll solve this riddle. So, thank you.
Other cases, all cases. Just say all cases.
Oh, okay. He's reminding me that we'll be looking at all cases that have been affected, because this is it's a systemic evaluation and interrogation of the whole criminal justice system. From the time you walk into the police station and you say, I've been violated by this particular man of God, to the time when the judge pronounced people, how do we make sure that when they come to the police station, whatever GBVF case is treated with dignity? And you're not told, no, go home and talk to your husband, you're being difficult now. We are looking at the whole system, and we will be inviting people over from start to end.
Can we get other comments?
No further comments, just to say it is a systemic challenge and it is a systemic approach that we're going to use. In fact, we are not going to end up with the pronouncements of the judges. We're going beyond to look at parole, because our parole system is failing. More and more people who are on parole are actually reoffending and going back within the first year of getting parole. So even that has got to be looked at. So it's going to be end to end. Yeah.
Thanks.
Some of the media houses would like to clarify. Can I maybe give 2 more questions? Otherwise, we need to close.
Oh, okay.
I think we are covered. Can we thank the chairpersons of the 3 chairperson organizations?